recording. Okay, so, welcome everyone. We all know this is our little resume session, hosted for the first time ever via Zoom because, big grown-up. I almost started a video. That's not what I want to do. I want to share my screen. That should be the right one. You all see something that looks like a PDF?
Yep.
Yes.
Looks great.
Fantastic. Okay. So those of you who have been to these before have probably seen this resume before because I have used it previously, but it works for me. So, someone's sending messages. Okay, don't actually care about those messages. So, just a little quick overview of my resume. It is all very small text, and there's a second page which shouldn't be there, which I'm going to go try and remove later, but it's fine, just ignore that for now. So, of course, I start with my name at the top because if they don't know who I am, why are they even going to bother looking at the rest of the resume? I also have my one certification that I currently hold. Just some quick contact information and my GitHub. That way, if they can go look at projects I've done previously. I'm not sure how many of them actually do that, but some of them do. Quick summary as far as languages I have experience with programming. Also, I put that I have a top secret clearance because I did intern with the Department of Defense, not this past summer, but back in 2019. I was supposed to be back there this summer, but they canceled it. I would recommend looking into internships like that for anyone who's looking for computer science or cybersecurity. It was honestly a lot of fun. I learned a lot of great stuff. Can't talk too much about it because, restrictions and whatnot. Also, I feel like I should have pointed this out at the beginning. I'm a dual major in computer science and cybersecurity, so that's kind of more what I've geared my resume towards. I have my education, which is just Fontbonne, of course, as we all know. Some relevant courses that I've taken, the actual degree I'm going for, my high school, just because sometimes I want to make sure you actually graduated high school. And then as far as experience goes, I have both technical field and other, because some stuff is more relevant, like a programming internship is more relevant than working at Firehouse Subs. This really just, it's internships and job shadows and hackathons I've gone to in the general time frame where I attended them. Then, other experience. This is where I've got my volunteer experience right here and my extracurriculars down here. Just all that sort of fun stuff. That's the long and short of my resume. This was designed by my older brother because I just can't design with anything, but all the information was provided by myself. Having the little bit of color helps you to stand out, and that is about all I can think of. Anyone have some questions, perhaps?
What about a cover letter?
Cover letters. I don't have one in the same file as my resume, but those are good. You usually want to tailor those to the company you're applying to. So whenever I write cover letters, I typically have it as a separate file and just attach both of them to the application. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have any examples on this machine because I recently changed computers and I'm not sure I actually pulled that over with me. Doesn't look like I did. But yeah, cover letters are definitely a good thing, especially when you're going for internships or even full-time jobs. Mike will be talking more about full-time jobs later since he has by far the most experience and the successful experience in that regard. Got a little chuckle there. Any other questions from anyone?
Are you guys sending thank you letters to every interview?
It never
Oh.
hurts. I never did it, but it can't hurt.
I think it's
Yeah.
better to do it because some companies it's not important, but some companies do look for that. So it's better to do that just in case they want you to do it. And usually an email works.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I'm kind of with both of them on that.
a thank you
Go ahead,
email is
Mike.
also a really good spot to slip in that, like, you're wondering what the next step will be, or just something to keep the ball rolling. To say something like, I appreciated your time. I'm looking forward to the next step. When might that be? Blah, 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 blah. Like just to keep up some momentum from the interview. But it's also just nice to say thanks.
I totally agree with both Mike and Joe. Sometimes I send them, sometimes I kind of forget. But when I do send them, it's typically just an email. And it's usually just that simple, hey, thanks for your time. Wondering what next steps are, blah, 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 as Mike and Joe covered. Obviously, word it more professionally than blah, blah, blah. But I figure most of you probably understand that already.
Worked for me.
Well, okay, Mike
Just
is
kidding.
the one person who can apparently use blah, blah, blah and get hired.
Well, he just puts so many personality in his blog.
That does sound like something Mike would be capable of doing. Any more quick questions before we move on to our next speaker, presenter, whatever we want to refer to ourselves as?
Is the tight spacing of the resume because you want to make it like as short and concise as possible, or do you think like maybe spacing it out a little bit to make it more readable would be better?
You usually want to try and keep a resume to one page as much as you can. I just had a lot I was trying to fit on here, so I went with some pretty small lettering. In all honesty, there's probably a bit of stuff on here that I can pull back off. It's just at the moment the way I have it set up, I've got so much on there and I want it to be one page that it does end up rather small and compact.
Yeah. This is just my opinion. I'm kind of with Alex on this, that like, I think a lot of your relevant coursework, maybe you could squeeze onto one line. I'm just thinking there's a lot of space on like the right side of the page that I feel like you could squeeze in more if you wanted to. Maybe by condensing things into one line.
Yeah, I probably could. In all honesty, I need to go back through my resume and sort of spruce it up a little bit. But yeah, there's definitely more than one way to do resumes. And yeah, I can definitely go and compact this a little bit. So if we've got it, maybe one more question and then we can move on.
I'm a big fan of the way you align the dates on the right. It looks
Well,
great.
thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, it's not seeming like there's any more questions. And in typical fashion for these, we didn't actually discuss who's going next. So Joe and Anna, anyone have a preference as to going next?
I can go because my resume has a little bit different spacing, so I think that's a good transition.
Okay. Yeah, let me go and stop my screen share, and I actually need to make it so other people can share. Okay. All participants can now share.
All right.
And you should be good to go.
Okay. Can you see my Chrome?
Yes.
I can see your Chrome.
All right. So, whoops. Alex, you can see my spacing is a little bit different, whereas Gray had it all in one column. I actually did for my skills and this other section 2 columns so I could fit more in and it's a little bit more readable. And I tried to separate it with these lines so then you can clearly see like which section is which. But it has a lot of almost the same stuff that Gray has. Okay, so one thing that I really liked that Gray also had was bolding your education and your job titles. I've seen a lot of resumes before that didn't have any bold, and it was just really hard to read. So I think it's good to have that in there. Let's see. And for the GPA too, sometimes it's better to do your major GPA if it's better than your cumulative GPA, and you can calculate that on your own. But I put my cumulative because it's way better than my major GPA. Let's see. And for skills, on the left side, I try to separate them so they kind of go with each other. So on the left side is more my technical skills, and then my right side is more like subjective or soft skills. And the reason I put, so I'm going for a data analyst or some sort of analyst job. So you can see I put analysis code or development code because one time I was going for a job and they said like I need to know how to use Python, and I said, oh, that's easy. But then in the interview they're talking about development in Python, not like I usually use Python as a tool rather than actually developing code. So that's why I have that there, but you don't have to put that. One thing though is just be prepared to talk about anything on your resume. So don't just put something on there because it sounds good, because during an interview, anything on your resume is fair game to be asked about. Then my experience section. One thing I like in there is like putting a short description of what you actually did at your job. And if you're just starting a resume and you don't have any internships yet, you can still, I kept this in here, I'm a barista. You can still put on a part-time job and then somehow make it relatable to the workforce. So I didn't just put, I make coffee on here. I put that like, I can make things in a timely manner and you have to use quick judgment sometimes. Or like, I can work well with other people. Like they don't care if I can steam milk or make espresso. Just if you put something like a part-time job on there, make it so it looks transferable to like a different job. And then you don't have to have this section, but I like the project section because I always get a lot of questions about that in interviews, and it's just makes it easier to talk in an interview, and the company can get an idea of like what kind of things you've done before, what you've worked on before. And if you don't think that you have any projects where you're thinking like, what can I put on there? I actually put this section down here to show how easy it is to add a project on here. Even if it's not really a project per se, you can just put on a random homework you did in a class that you think can be relatable to the jobs you're applying for. Like for example, in my stats class, we made, just for like one homework, no, actually it was a class example, but we did like a butterfly wingspan prediction model, and it actually didn't take that long to do. But since I'm applying for analyst jobs, like this could relate really well to jobs I'm applying for, and it's just a homework I did. I didn't do a lot of extensive work on it, but make sure you know a lot about that homework. Just go through and work it again or something so that you can answer questions about it. And it's really easy to put a homework assignment on here and just like tailor it so it looks like it relates to the job you're applying for. So like, for example, analyst jobs, they want you to have worked in Excel and R a lot. So I could say something like, in Excel, I cleaned data containing both categorical and quantitative variables. So this seems like really fancy, but I don't know. I just wrote that in 1 second and that looks good on the resume. Or you can put something like in RStudio, because say the job you're applying for, once you have worked with like SAS or R or some other statistical code, then you could put that and just say like, I made a model and evaluated it. I don't know. But it's really easy to add things to your resume. You just have to be creative about it and make it related to the jobs you're applying for and be able to talk about it and prepare for questions. Like if I was in an interview and they asked me about this, they might ask, why did you do that? And then I'll just say, I did it to understand linear regression better. Don't just say you did it for class, because I don't know. It seems like you just happened to do that instead of deciding to do it. But that's all I have for now. Does anyone have a question?
If you put a programming language on there, is it important to put like what you use that programming language through? So like if you do like Java through Eclipse or R through RStudio, is that important?
You don't have to put it on there, especially like in the skills section. You don't have to. This is just in my opinion. You may say later, like down here, I said I use Python in a Jupyter Notebook, but you don't have to say like what you used it through. It usually just matters if you have used it before. Does that help?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. It's good to have it. Like I probably should have put Python down here. It's good to have it like in the projects or your other job experiences so they can see like, okay, this is their skill and then this is where they used it, something like that. That's just in my opinion, and that's worked out well for me. And I know not everyone does it that way. Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess to Alex's question, it really matters how niche the platform that you're working on is. Like for Java, the differences between like Eclipse and IntelliJ and Visual Studio Code, like the differences are all negligible. So I wouldn't list that you've done it in Eclipse, but if you've worked in something like
I can't
Python
hear
with
Mike. He's
Anaconda,
cutting out or something.
oh,
Yeah, Mike, you're getting kind of quiet.
oh, really? Dang. All right.
Okay, now you.
Okay, so it depends how niche the like the platform that you're working on is. Like if you're switching between IDEs like Eclipse or Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ, like the differences aren't that big. But if it's something like Python where you've worked in Anaconda versus some like just command line Python, I would just note like the Anaconda suite. I would include that like Joe has here. But if you're working in something like Java, I wouldn't include what IDE you're using.
Yeah, so basically if the IDE like has stuff, extra stuff in it that helps you along, like you said with Python or like definitely with like RStudio, then probably put it on there.
Yeah. I don't know about RStudio. I guess it can't. If you've got the room, go for it. It can't hurt.
Yeah. And I think most of the time they'll assume you use RStudio for R, in my opinion. Okay, was there anything else?
Oh, did you like mimic this layout from somewhere, or did you kind of just like think of it on your own?
Kind of. I started off by watching more like formatting. I watched a YouTube video and it said like you can put a table in, like do a table and whoops. You can put a table in there to make the columns, but for the actual sections, I don't know. I kind of just put them in here and I like the layout of it, that your education is first, because I feel like that's most important, especially if you're just graduating, and then your skills. But I don't know.
I would like to say something also. This is Dr. Roy. Please try not to use a template when creating your resume. If you use a template, it becomes harder to change later on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, and also try to keep like the, I don't know what you call it, just make it look consistent too and really easy to go from section to section. Because like if this wasn't indented, I don't know, it just doesn't look that clean. So I just indent that. Oh, well, I'll fix that later. Okay. And I also keep it in Google Docs because I think it's really easy to edit and then just change the date on it and then save it as a PDF. Let's see. Yeah, just like as a PDF, and I edit it that day. I think it's a lot easier than going into Word and then saving another Word file. I don't know, I just like this better. So I recommend Google Docs, but you can do whatever you want. Okay. Well, I guess the next person can go if they want.
Sorry, I had a little bit of trouble with my headset there for a second. Thank you very much, Joe.
Yep.
I guess
No
next,
problem.
Anna, you ready? Apparently this earbud's also dead. Okay, I've got to change.
I guess I'm ready, maybe.
Okay.
I don't really know how I'm gonna do it, but
Okay. Well, I'll be honest. I have no idea either. I just sort of winged it. But yeah, the floor is yours.
okay. I'm gonna do the sharing and stuff now. Can you see it?
No.
You can't see it? It says I'm sharing.
I don't see it on my screen.
I don't see anything. Oh, I see it now.
Okay, I see it.
Oh, it just took a little bit to load.
I guess so.
So you can see it now.
Yes.
Okay, so this isn't actually my current resume. Instead, it's the resume that I used to get my internship. So this is the exact resume that the HR people saw, like when I submitted it to them and stuff. Although I removed like personal info, so I don't dox myself. So on the actual resume, it has like the real stuff. But anyway, so it has like my name and then like all the like contact stuff. And then I put like this little like profile section to say like, oh, I'm looking for an internship or whatever, but not everybody does this, so I guess you don't need to do it if you don't want to, but I did. And then I have like education stuff where I have like my major and also another thing I heard is that, so I originally had like honor society stuff under like the volunteering and like activities and stuff, but I was told to put education related extracurriculars in the education section so that they see it right away. So I just like copy pasted the bullet points up here instead. And I guess it makes sense to keep like education things together anyway, so that is how I did it. And then for like programming languages, I just put like, oh, I know this stuff or whatever. And then like I have all the math classes and computer science classes I did. And I made it 2 columns so that it fills up the page nicer. Because if it was 1 column, it would be like really awkward and it would just like fill up the page really weird. So you make it 2 columns and it just looks nicer. You could even maybe do 3 columns if you have a lot of stuff, I guess. Maybe I'll eventually add a 3rd column, I don't know. And then I have work experience stuff. But if you don't have work experience, you can just put more projects. I only have 1 project on here though, just to fill up room. And so Yeah. And then I have like extracurricular stuff. So that's all. Any comments or questions or anything?
Yeah, could we go down to the work experience section again, real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to highlight. I really like how your description leads with communicated algebra concepts, and you aided students, and those are just really. I know this is kind of like cliche advice, but you really want strong verbs when you're describing your work experience. So I really like communicated and aided there. Like when you're describing work experience, you really don't want to start with like worked with students or made I don't know, made things, not made things, but like made coffee, right? You want words. The first word should really be a strong verb that leads well and describes what you do. And I really like this section.
Anna, it's Dr. Roy. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So when you made the 2 columns, did you use like a table to make those, or did you just tab across?
So this, I don't know why like Word is so weird about like columns. So what I did is, I guess it's under layout.
Because you did a very nice
In
job with the 2
columns?
columns. So it's
So-
under layout columns.
Yeah, I think I just did like layout columns or something, and then you can, oh no, where did it go?
It says 2 columns there.
One, that's really weird. So it says 1 column, but then I make it 2, and then that happens. That's really weird. But yeah, Word is really weird about columns. It took a long time to actually get the columns to look right. It's
Well,
also
that's
really,
why I asked you for advice.
so yeah, I didn't just tab it over. Instead, let me
You
go
used
to
this
another.
column feature.
Yeah, I use the column thing. So you should be able to like, if you have like a bunch of bullet points or whatever, then you should be able to, I don't know if you like highlight it and go to layout. I don't really know like what black magic I use to get this to work. But it is possible, I know that.
Okay, but people can research how to use it.
Yeah, I figured it out somehow, so it's kind of finicky with how it works.
Yeah, but it does a good job when you do it, not just tabbing over.
Yeah, because
Having
then
a way
I
to
guess
do
it lines up the bullet points all nice and stuff, so I'm not sure what this does. This weird bar. Yeah, Word is weird about. Oh no. There we go. Anything else?
Okay, well, I guess if there's no further questions, thank you so much, Anna. You did great.
Yay.
And at the moment, I've got a little bar across the top of my meeting saying there's 4 minutes and 9 seconds left. So let's hope that doesn't actually kick us out when it does. But if you'd like to, Mike, you have the floor. And like I said earlier, if we do get kicked out, I'll just reopen the meeting immediately. We can all hop right back in and pick up where we left off.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, we could just play Hangman for 3.5 minutes if you want. But okay, I'm gonna share this whole screen. Okay, are you guys seeing a resume in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I do want to preface this. Word ate my header. Do not do it like this. You want your name, right? You want your name and your phone number and your email up top in an eye-catching way. This was kind of a pain to open because I think my Word subscription is actually up after graduation. But anyway, have a header. Okay, now that that's out of the way, hello. My name's Mike Brennan. I think everybody knows me because I know everybody, and or everybody in this meeting. So I graduated in May, and now I'm working at Bayer Crop Science. It's the old Monsanto. I'm doing software development out there. I'm working mainly in JavaScript. I'm working on an application that does mapping for farmers, for research farmers. So if you have an experiment that you want to run on your custom breed of corn, you can use the application that I'm working on to like lay out where your farm's going to be and draw like where your rows of corn will be, and then you can hand that off to a tractor to drive. So that's like my bona fides. That's what I do now. But before that, I was in college, and this is the resume that I used coming out of college to apply for jobs. Now, I will note that it's a little different for every job because you should be tailoring your resume to the job that you're applying for, but this is the base resume that I use, and then I tweak it from there. Also, I know I've been having volume problems through this initial spiel. Has everybody been able to hear me?
In your last sentence, you cut out a little bit, so it's just kind of sporadic.
No. Okay. All right. Well, so I'll just try and yell into the microphone, and let's see what we can do here. So this is the resume that I used back in last winter when I was applying for jobs. And I've got really strong beliefs on the structure of resumes, and I'd like to walk through how I laid mine out. I also firmly believe that you should steal resume layouts from each other. If you like how somebody's resume looks, ask them for their resume, delete all the words that they've got, and then like replace them with your own. And that way you can kind of keep the same structure. I borrowed this structure from my sister. I thought it looked really good. So I just like copied hers, ripped out all of hers experience. And it's not exactly the same. I switched some like sections around. I added some sections. But I'm a firm believer, if you like somebody's resume layout, ask them for that resume, and hopefully they will let you borrow that structure from them. If anybody would like this one, even though it's missing my name, I'm also happy to give it to you. So let's dive into it. So I like to lead off with a short description of like who I am, what I'm looking for. This is kind of like a buzzword dump. So if you're looking for a development job, like I put, which is mainly what I was looking for, I put like languages that I'm strong in, right? And then just a little blurb about some skills, and then like some specific skills that go with the job. Alex, did I ever tell you about the cat laser?
No, you didn't.
Oh, that was my project in that class. Me and Tom Hood, we made a toy to play with your cat automatically, and it was like a laser mounted on a turret, and it would just like shoot at random.
Yeah, I actually remember that, Mike.
It was so much fun.
That sounds dangerous.
It also took like 45 minutes to make, so it was a great project.
Hey, that's easier than the one I made. It took me like 8 hours.
Ooh. What'd you do? Wait, yeah,
Um,
what was yours?
It was the thing that like had a microphone, and whenever it picked up sound, it put out different lights to the
Oh, yeah.
RGB LEDs.
I remember that. That was sweet. That looked really cool. Okay, do we have everybody back?
I think
we
so.
have 8 people, so we should be good.
Okay, well, now you're going to be subjected to my babbling again.
Go for it.
Le screen is le shared. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Sir.
Okay, so we're all either looking for internships or coming out of college and looking for a job, and the employers that we're applying to, they all know that, which is why I firmly believe that education should be the first section on your resume. So I would list your major, right? Any minors that you've got going on, and then where you went to school, right? So a lot of people like to list their school first and then their major. Personally, I like listing, listing your major first because really employers don't care too much where you went to school, as long as it's like a real college that actually exists. So I am a big fan of listing what degree you have first. And then I also think that the education section is a good place to throw in any like academic distinctions that you've earned. It's a good place to like jam them in without making it seem like out of place in your like extra section. Throw in your GPA. I'm with Joe. Do the major GPA if it works out better for you, just to give yourself that advantage. Because really, major GPA is what they're going to care about. So after education, employers also want to know if you want to work, which is why I believe the experience section is one of, I'd say it belongs after education, just because I think it has the best chance of showing off that like that you have a good chance of being a good employee. One thing that often goes underestimated is that there are a lot of people who just no show on interviews and stuff. There's a lot of people who like get hired and then like just don't show up. So if you have work experience, if you can list that you know how to work in an office environment, you know how to work in, not even in an office environment, just like you know how to work with other people, that is a huge advantage and you should definitely take advantage of it. When you get into the experience, I like to list where I worked and then what I did. And when you're listing these, list them in order of relevance. So relevance has to do both with what you did and when you did it. So like the last job that I had was at Fonfon, right? So I did the math tutoring and I worked at the library, but I put that one third because my internships are more relevant to the jobs that I'm applying for. Also, I would say limit yourself to your last 3 job experiences. I'd say, yeah, 3 is a good number. 4 if you're looking for ways to fill up the page. But I have other job experiences, but then list them in the order of relevance. That's the key. I also want to point out, like wrote probably isn't a good word here. I probably should say something else. But developed, analyzed, scripted, maintained, tutor, clarify, run is kind of weak too, but these verbs are really important. I also say, as you go through your jobs from most to least relevant, elaborate on them less. Like for this one at NISA, it was pretty close to the jobs I was applying for. I ended up working in JavaScript, so I thought this was a big job to talk about. So you see, I gave it 3 lines. The internship the summer before, 2018, give it 2 lines. Math tutoring, I also gave it 2 lines because it's a current job, and honestly, I really liked it, and I was proud of it. Library student worker, right? Probably not all that relevant except for having people skills. So just 1 line. If you do have a job that's public facing, I highly recommend saying that you interact with the public, because the public requires a lot of patience, and it's a skill that comes in handy even when you're working in a job that isn't public facing, because you're going to have to talk to other people that like you don't work with every day. You're going to have to give information to other departments and stuff, and just being able to work with maybe not the public, but people that you don't really know and communicate well with them, that's a key skill that you can talk about. So like if you worked at Firehouse Subs, for example, maybe you list that you interact with the public. Skills and coursework, when you're applying for a job that's not an internship, I especially like the word skills around here, because you're applying with people like that, like maybe they don't do the traditional route and go to college, right? But also if you have skills that you didn't learn in class, like let's say, like Jacob, I know you did first robotics in high school. Like if you have robotics skills, you can list those. It doesn't have to be something that you learned in school. Like one guy on my team, like he was a roofer before he started. He has a biology degree, but he taught himself like how to code. So if you just limit yourself to the coursework that you've taken, you're kind of selling yourself short. Also, shuffle around the skills that you've got. Like if you think it's a job that requires more math. So I should note, I was a computer science and applied math major. I was applying for jobs on both ends of the spectrum of that. So sometimes I would flip the mathematics skills first And these are really just classes that I took, because honestly, I don't do that much recreational math. But, oh, whoops. Okay. Also, don't highlight things strangely. Okay. But if it's a coding job, I would throw the coding first and rank these in order of the strengths that you have. Like if you're throwing out your skills and you want to talk about languages, like they are going to ask you things. If you put something on here, be able to talk about it, right? Like if I throw Git on here and I just know that it's version control, but I don't really know how to use it, they might call me out on that. It might get a little hairy in an interview because then that calls into question everything else on your resume. But you also don't have to be an expert to put it on your resume. Like I'm not an expert in robotics, but I took a class. I could talk about it. Be able to talk about something for probably 2 minutes, and you're pretty well set to put it on your resume. But also, when you're talking about it for those 2 minutes, make sure that you mention that you're a beginner, and don't like mislead them into thinking that you're an expert in robotics, because I'm certainly not an expert in robotics. But play to your strengths. So like Java, C#, those are probably my best languages. Which is also something to note. Well, I'll get into that later. I'll also talk about like the application process and how that differs from internships versus jobs. Okay, here's the project section. I'm a huge fan of the project section. I am an enormous fan of the project section. If you don't have a project section, I highly recommend getting one. Because you can say that you took the software engineering course. You can say that you took Java or Calc 3, right? But that kind of leaves the person who's interviewing you wondering, like what actually happened in that class? Well, or even at your jobs, like what happened at those jobs? What did you do besides writing components? Were they good components? What did they do? So if you list out some projects, that lets you tell them like what exactly is going on. It's also a really good starting point when you get into interviews, because you can talk about those projects and you'll have kind of a written summary in front of you to help jog your memory. So I'm a huge fan of the project section. It shows you in the best light. It gives them specific details to lodge in their mind about what you can do, what your capabilities are. Extracurricular, frankly, this is extracurricular should shrink, I think, over time as you gain work experience, as you gain projects, but it is still worth having in there. Honestly, I should probably take the Boy Scout one off because I don't really do that anymore. I haven't done it for a bit. And this does need updating because this is all from like when I was coming out of college. But list an extracurricular, it helps, shows them that you're not a robot. You also don't have to put everything you do. But if you think it's helpful, if you think it showcases something like leadership or communication abilities, then go ahead and put it. Finally, throw some references on there if you want. If you don't have room, I'd say references are the #1 thing that you can get rid of if you're running out of space on a page. After that, probably extracurricular. But references are nice because they say there's an implicit statement in there that I've done well at these places and I'm okay with you contacting people that I've worked with because I am confident that they'll say good things about me. So I like references just as a confidence boost. I will warn you, if you're applying for an internship, they're probably not going to check your references. If you apply for a full-time job, they might check your references. So if you list somebody as a reference and you apply for a job, I would let that person know that you applied for that job, or just ask them, hey, I'm going to be applying for some jobs in the future. Is it okay if I list you as a reference? The point being, you have to ask your references if you can list them. You can't just blindly that they'll take calls for you. So that's the layout of my resume. I like to go education, work experience, skills, projects, have some projects. So that's mostly what I've got for resume stuff. I also want to talk about the differences between like internship work and searching for a career full-time. So there's a few things to note. When you're looking for a full-time job as opposed to an internship, there's like an internship season, right? They swing around, applications start opening up in like October, November. They close up by like, I don't know, February, March, and that's not even true. That you can find some afterward. It's just trickier. With full-time positions, like HR posts those jobs whenever they want. There is no season. So like right now is the time to apply, but it's always time to apply. So just apply to full-time jobs is my first advice. I'd also say that you are interviewing them when you're applying to a job. So if it looks like you wouldn't want it, like maybe don't apply for that job, because the worst that can happen for an internship is that you're there for a summer, it doesn't go well, you don't like it, and you want to move on come the school year. I've done that before, right? If you apply to a full-time job and you don't like it, like you can move on, but you don't want to become a job hopper either, because then it becomes more difficult to find other jobs in the future. Luckily, I really like the job that I'm at, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. But I do just want to reinforce, like, you are interviewing the companies that you're interviewing with. I also want to note that when you're, that companies don't expect you to know everything, right? List stuff on your resume, but if the job calls for something like C#, but you know Java, apply anyway. You don't have to know these languages. And in fact, a lot of jobs are going to ask you to learn a new language as part of your job. They understand that you're not going to be a seasoned industry professional coming out of college. So don't be afraid to apply for jobs that seem a little bit out of your wheelhouse, right? So like the language I'm working in right now is called React. It's a JavaScript framework for building web pages. And like I didn't know that coming in, and they're totally cool with that. It's fine. You can learn stuff on the job. And that's why, like, you know how people always say, like, college is about learning how to learn. It's actually true. And it's also, like, when you're in an interview, be cognizant that it's more about, like, knowing context, like concepts than syntax about a language so much. Like, if they're showing you Java, they don't really care if it's .length or .size, but they do care if you know object-oriented programming. What else? I guess to piggyback off that a bit, when you start a new job, sometimes they'll have rotational programs. So you don't have to know exactly what you want to do always. So some companies will do rotational programs where they'll like put you in one department, have you work there for a few weeks, see what you're good at, see what you like, and then they'll bounce you to another department, spend a couple weeks there, and just see where you catch on the best. Bayer does that most years in normal years. COVID kind of messed that up this year, but I know it's really common in accounting, as sometimes in finance too. And so just keep an eye out for jobs that offer that, because that's really handy. The workplace is pretty different. And so like figuring out what you want to do is pretty important early on, because you don't want to get pigeonholed for the rest of your career into something that you don't really like doing. So if you can get a rotational program, that's great. There's also a ton of great jobs out there that don't do rotational programs, but if you can find one, that's awesome. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I guess it just boils down to, in the end, I just want to repeat, like, apply, apply, apply. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. If you're looking for a full-time job, I'd say now is the season to apply. Next month is the season to apply. Like, until graduation, until you find one, and after graduation, just keep applying, just keep shooting the shots that you can take. And that's the best advice about finding a job that you can get. Any questions about like new hiring process coming out of college, or more resume specific?
What about letters of recommendation?
Okay, so if somebody asks for letters of recommendation, go for it. Ask your recommender person for a letter of recommendation. I think people tend to go more with like asking for the phone number of your references than asking for a letter of rec. Make sure that you're not burning out anybody that you're putting as a reference. Letters of recommendation are rare asks enough that I wouldn't really worry about having one on file or on deck already. If somebody like insists that you have one, then ask somebody to recommend you. If that happens a lot, start asking different people, because you don't want to burn out the people that are writing for you.
I have a question, Mike. What was your first, 30 days like on your job when you first started at Bayer?
Ooh, good. Yeah. So the first 30 days were weird. All right. So I'm still in my house. Like this Unabomber looking setup, like is totally devoid of stuff because this is the background I use for work. It's a little strange. The first week I actually didn't have a laptop, so I couldn't really do anything. That was weird. I just went to meetings and stuff. So I'm not really gonna act like that's normal. First 30 days is all about two things. It's about onboarding and getting you up to speed on like the projects that you're working on. And honestly, I'm 3 months in, and it's pretty similar to the first 30 days. First 30 days is usually pretty heavy in like policy onboarding. They're going to do a lot about like no harassment policy. This is our information security policy, and you're going to have to read a lot of stuff. You're going to have to go to a lot of trainings. But also they're going to start throwing like the ongoing projects at you. So one big difference between like schoolwork and a lot of internships even and starting a career is that you're starting nothing from scratch. Everything already, not everything already exists, but you're always jumping into a project that's mid-flow. Like even when you're starting up a new project, it has to hook into other projects that already exist. So background information is huge. So the first 30 days for me were spent doing a lot of it was a lot of training about background information. There's a lot of farming jargon that gets thrown around in this job that I didn't really know about. So learning that has been a process that's still ongoing. So the first 30 days, what to expect is you're going to be confused. There's going to be a lot of like just a lot of terms, a lot of concepts that you don't understand because they're business specific. But learning those is going to give you a solid foundation. It's about building a foundation, building a knowledge base so that you can like make decisions down the line. First 30 days, they're not expecting much productivity out of you. Okay, there's something I know. I hope people are familiar with imposter syndrome, right? Where you can kind of feel like everybody else knows what's going on and you don't know what's going on. And there's two things that are wrong about that. If you catch yourself thinking like, I don't belong here, everybody else is so talented, everybody else knows what they're doing, two things to remember. Number one, like you only see the stuff that they put out there. So like not everybody's wildly shooting off and like making great moves every time. The other thing is that when you're new at a job, there's just so much background information that you need to learn before you can like understand what's going on. So I'm 3 months in and I still ask for help like all the time. And I take like 3 times longer to do stuff than the head developers, just because there's so much background information that you need to know. Expect to feel lost, but also know that it's okay to feel lost because nobody expects you to know what you're doing immediately.
That's great information. Thanks so much for that.
For the education part on the resume, would you recommend only putting like your highest level, or like I have an associate, so like after I graduate with my bachelor's, should I continue to list the associates or just put the bachelor's on there?
That's a good question. I would say list the associates personally. Or like, what's your associates in?
Math.
Okay.
Like,
yeah, if it's in the same thing as your bachelor's, I would say list your bachelor's. Yeah. It's one of those things, if you have room, it's cool. But if you're trying to fit everything onto one page and it's kind of a squeeze, that's one of the things that I would drop off. Yeah,
I agree with Mike on that, including the associates, especially your GPA, if it's a high GPA.
It never hurts to have more degrees.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
okay, thank you.
What else? Trying to think of anything that I didn't hit that I wanted to talk about. Just to elaborate onto my own cluelessness, there's going to be a ton of, if you're working in software development, I know this from experience, but also in other fields like data analysis, but all like other technical fields, or not even technical. You know what? Why am I saying this so much about which field? This is going to be true in pretty much any job that us collectively are gunning for. There's going to be a ton of tools. There's going to be a ton of tool use. So you're not going to have to build everything from scratch. But one of the major tricks, or one of the major hurdles to jump over, is learning how to use those tools. So like when you're hosting a web page, you throw everything onto a server, right? And people bounce it off that server. And like what we've been doing, you know, you can just host something locally, but you can't just host it locally in other places, which is why I like the Minecraft server that you guys are running so much, because I think it gets people experience hosting things. But the point I was going for is there's a ton of tools that you're going to have to use, and that's going to contribute to the feeling of not knowing what you're doing at first, and it's kind of going to limit your productivity at first. So that's another thing to remember. Like, it's okay if you're not jumping out of the gates guns blazing, because there's just so much that there's no way you could have known ahead of time what you need to do.
You had mentioned highlighting some differences between internship type work and actual job type work. I don't know if you hit on that or not.
Yeah, so the difference is that internship type work, so it totally depends where you work. Some places use internships as like extra labor that's cheaper than a full-time developer. Other places use internship work as like an extension of HR to like find good candidates. If you're in the first camp where they're just kind of treating you like a full-time developer, then it's not going to be that different, or developer, analyst, other job title, right? It's not going to be that different. If it's more of an HR focused internship, then you're probably going to be starting projects from the ground up, right? The other thing is that internships tend to have like a spanning project, whereas full-time work, more, it's like the time frame's a little shorter. I don't know if that helps, or if that's clear.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening to me babble for half an hour.
Thanks for coming back to talk to us.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good to be
thanks for
back.
joining us today, Mike.
I've been hanging in this room for 3 months, so it's cool to talk to you guys again.
It's good to see you, Mike.
Yeah, you too, Dr. Roy.
Thanks for the info. It's great to see you.
Yeah, how's your kid doing, Mary?
Which one?
Well, the new one. I didn't see you like all last semester.
I know his first birthday is next week, so we're gonna do
No
a smash.
way.
I'm excited.
Awesome.
Thanks for asking. That's nice.
Okay, well, if anyone has any last minute comments, concerns, quips, jokes, short stories.
I want to know more about the farming jargon.
Oh yeah. All right. So the farming jargon is crazy. All right. There's so much of it. So one of the first jobs that I landed in that like I didn't really contribute to was that there's these planters. Okay. They're these like automatic planters that you hook up behind a tractor, and they'll like drop seeds every few feet, like with precision. Okay. And there's two types that these farms use. They're called cassettes and packets. So that was one thing to figure out. So a cassette is like a plastic box full of seeds that like drops seeds at regular intervals, while packets are like envelopes full of seeds that people put out by hand. And then I was just totally lost, because there's like plots, which is one square of like a farm, And then there's grids that like can be a plot, or they can be something else like an obstacle in the way, or fallow, which is like land that you till but you're not planting in. And then they've got like this row space. So they've got rows, right, which are what you think they are. They're just like rows, but they've also got passes which go horizontally to the rows of crops. They've got swaths, which are like multiple rows together that the tractor drives over. They've got planting sessions, which is like when you're done planting, or when you're done planting the crops and you like actually plant them. And geez, it's just so much. And then there's like federally regulated planting sessions, and then there's like non-federally regulated planting sessions, and it just never stops. There's always more talk about corn. It's kind of a pet peeve.
That was very riveting. Thank you. I enjoy hearing all the like weird terminology you have to learn, like just to get up to speed with stuff.
Sounds like a lot of stuff you gotta weed through.
I do like this job because there's a lot of like, it feels very direct. Like every 2 weeks we'll get on a call with people who are using our product to like plant seeds in the ground. So it feels very like the work I do has a very direct real world impact. And I like that about the job. But it also means I have to know what they're talking about when they talk about their farm.
So did they give you like a booklet on how to memorize this stuff, or did you just go the first day on the job and then you had to ask questions constantly?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I just ask as I go. I write down stuff as I go. We did do some, so there's another new guy on the team, and we were kind of talking, and we were like, hey, this is a lot of farming stuff. So we did sit down for like a couple hours and talk out like what some of these farming terms are, but there's always new ones. So yeah, I just ask as I go.
It's like, here, Mike, here's a farmer's almanac. Have fun.
Yeah. Man, maybe I should try that. I think they sell them at Dollar Tree.
I don't think that's what you think it is.
No, I don't think it'll help that much.
Yeah, probably not.
So one thing I was going to say is, it makes me kind of nervous to put things like assembly on my resume because, we had about 8 weeks of it, and I don't really know what I would say in those 2 months. I guess I could, devise something to say, but I see it on you guys' resumes, so maybe I should just add it to mine.
Yeah, so one thing I would check out is like if you think they're going to ask about assembly, maybe not brush up about like the technical side, but just like what registers are, and like maybe think about some projects that you did with it. If you can remember one homework or one project that you did for like everything on your resume, every skill that you list on your resume, honestly, that's enough to talk about.
Okay, that's great because I can put some Arduino thing on there. That'd be pretty good.
Yeah, like I'm not strong in assembly. If somebody asked me about assembly, I'd be like, look, I did some projects about like string reversal.
I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, is that they don't expect you to be like a professional in all of these skills, that there is a learning curve there. And I think that a lot of students in our position don't understand that.
I'll be honest, Mike's description of like reasoning behind having assembly on there and what to actually say about it is much better than anything I would say. I kind of just hope no one asks me about that, which is a horrible practice.
Yeah, there. I mean, yeah, you can. There's a lot of stuff that you can get away with not getting called on. I wouldn't rely on it though. I mean, don't do it with too many items. Don't do it with any optimally, officially.
Yeah, I'm 100% not recommending that. I'm just saying that's what I do and it's a horrible practice. Also,
Yeah.
we just keep losing people. They just keep disconnecting. We've lost
No,
three
we're
in the
hemorrhaging.
last 5 minutes.
Dr. Roy's not still here, right?
No,
Okay,
Dr.
yeah.
Roy
I mean,
is
I do
lost.
that too. Like assembly for me is like in the same boat. Like I kind of know it. I don't know it enough to like solve problems in it right now, but I can talk about it a bit. Mainly, I just hope they don't call me on it.
And
Yeah, I just don't want to discount that experience either, because I do have Arduino experience with it, and I did have those projects experience. But if that's okay for me to put on there, I definitely want to add it.
Yeah, go for it.
and
Weird
just
thing.
real quick for everyone still here, a bit of experience I actually got from Mike himself at one of last year's resume sessions. Under skills, you can put good communication because no one can call you out on it. They can't prove that you can't communicate.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
So
so
just
my
sharing the tidbit of wisdom from Michael, the wisest of us all.
right, strong analytical problem solving communication skills. These are free. There's no way that, or these are totally free to put on your resume. I mean, try and back them up. Like I do think I have strong analytical problem solving and communication skills. And it can lead to some embarrassing moments. Like when I was applying for Bayer, I was at an interview and they asked me what my biggest strength was. And I started trying to say communication, except I started stuttering. And I was like, gosh, what's the word? Communication. And the irony was just through the roof.
But
That's
it still
rough.
worked out for you.
It worked out, but
So we do have all of 3.5 minutes left. Anyone have any further questions or jokes, quips, anything of the sort?
Guys, thanks so much.
yeah, thanks everybody.
And Mike, thank you again for coming. You can't see it, but coming back with air quotes to meet with us today via Zoom. I really appreciate it. You shared some great stuff, which is awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to help. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. And
I also have a question. So even after you apply to a lot of places and buy, what time should you expect for them to come back to you, if they will?
Let's
Like
see.
within a month or two? Or
If they
3
haven't
or-
gotten back to you in like a month, I would just discount them and keep moving forward. They might get back to you later, but if they haven't gotten back to you in like a month, I would say just keep moving, apply somewhere else, or like still being applying other places even if they do get back to you, but just treat it, write it off like they're not getting back to you even if they do later.
And then what are we supposed to do if push comes to shove and there's nobody that's taken our offers? As rare as hopefully that doesn't happen, but what if it does happen? What should we
like
do?
if you've searched and like nobody's doing internships this year because it's all
Or
virtual
you
or
applied
whatever,
to like
or,
50 places and got no responses back?
yeah, 50 is a good number. Like if you get no responses back and it's May and you're like, what the heck am I going to do this summer? Man, I'd say go find a job like at your local Olive Garden. And that's serious advice. Like don't go to Olive Garden. I mean, you can go to Olive Garden, it's fine. But like just get some more work experience. If you're really looking to like if you're trying to optimize your resume, just get some more work experience on there. Work for the summer. Work experience goes a really long way, even if it's not in the field. But while you're working at Olive Garden, keep applying to internships because some places are weird. Some places don't have their stuff together, and they're like hiring interns in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
So moral of the story is, if you don't get an internship and you apply to every single internship that you can think of, sit down, think of some more internships, and keep applying. And in the meantime, go work at Olive Garden.
Just real quick to kind of follow up on that, like Mike was saying, just keep applying until you do eventually get something. one of my internships, I found out a week before I started that I got the internship. So that was a whole lot of fun, but it ended up being a great internship. So yeah, just keep applying and find another form of work until you do hear back from an internship positively. And honestly, this meeting's probably going to end in about 15 seconds. So if anyone has anything, go real quick.
Great job getting this together, Gray.
Thanks, Mike.
Great event.